And to tinker with the lines of Star Trek, the economy, the final frontier, these are the voyages of the Starship South Africa. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to capture the unicorn of double-digit economic growth, to seek out new life and new opportunities, to boldly go where no man has gone before. What's true is that we are in a few tight spots as the working class struggle to make ends meet. Growth is bleak, SOEs are bleeding. This is Madam Speaker, and I'm asking whether Captain Tito Mboweni is able to outmaneuver these Klingons, or is Starship South Africa stuck in space, floating haplessly in a galaxy of space debris? My panel this evening, everyone's got a smile on their face, which is great. Tanya Cohen is the CEO of Busa. Clancy Pai is a consulting economist. My jury, Kaya Sitole, accountant and commentator, Wayne Duvenage from Alta, and Andrew Maseko, an analyst with Genesis Analytics. Good evening, and thank you to all of my guests. As always, only one rule applies. You have your notes, Tanya, but you can throw them away. Let's keep it really short and to the point as time is limited. Tanya, maybe to start with you. Was Tito Mboweni bold enough?
So we think he was in a really, really difficult space. And as you said, the Starship is really going through some very, very rough territory. We think on things like Eskom and the state-owned enterprises that we actually wanted to see a concrete plan. It wasn't enough in terms of we want to see timing. To some extent, the 23 billion every year for the next 10 years, it doesn't sort out the problem as we want to see it sorted out.
Especially because we were primed, or we were expecting a definitive announcement following the State of the Nation address on this very issue.
Yep. Yeah, so that was one area that I think we wanted to see more bold steps. The other area was certainly around policy. Why didn't he reinforce the importance of property rights? And I think the policy areas that we heard him speaking to, they were spoken about in the State of the Nation address. We really need to have a radical change in terms of the policy direction in order to get growth growing. So we didn't see enough in that regard. And then I think on the public sector, really, there's good signalling there. So that was important in terms of that we are going to try and contain it.
Downsizing, cutting the wage bill.
Yeah, but we need to do much more than that. So the reality is that we need to make the public service efficient. We need to make sure that going forward it's going to be effective and it's going to be service orientated, and that's going to take a lot of work. So I think a lot of it also turns back to us as business. We have to also come to the party with other social partners. We've got to get into these deep conversations and actually resolve some of these challenges.
Yeah, but we can't have any more conversations. We've had quite a few last year, so we need to get into the territory where we're actually starting to activate the levers of our economy, as we keep talking about. Clancy, here's the important backdrop. So, you know, we're a couple of hours away from the end of today, but by the end of today, 1.2 billion rand, I think, is what he is saying, that we are borrowing every day. We are sitting at a deficit. We spend 243 billion rand more than we earn. I mean, just the thought of that. But his admission was frank, because he was saying, you know, this is how much we're borrowing every day, assuming that we don't borrow money on the weekend. His response, was it the right one?
Look, I think one of the key things that I feel sad for him about is the idea that, for example, he says we need to think about nationalizing these things. I'm not so sure that his boss thinks the same way, right? Because, privatizing these...
was that a Freudian slip?
Privatizing them. But his boss has said there will be no privatization. So there's actually, it seems to me, a disconnect between what the finance minister and his boss are saying. And one of the biggest things that you've got to do is that he must have full support in every idea and everything that he brings forward. But I think also in some of these things, I'm very surprised at, for example, what they put in agriculture. Remember, the land question has been a big issue for the past year. And if you look at the amount of money that's being put away for supporting of agriculture and for land reform, especially since the ANC has said a lot of this stuff, a lot of the land will be bought back rather than actually taken over. Tanya talks about, about property rights. The money that's put in the budget suggests to me that we are actually, as you say, we are tinkering, and we are not actually going to move forward to do all the things that we need to do, especially in an election year. So I'm a bit concerned about where we are and where we thought we were going to be, including some of the targets we've missed. I mean, about how much we borrow. Actually, what we promised after Nenegate was that we are going to bring down spending, we're going to do all these wonderful things, that our debt was going to come down. Our debt is actually increasing. We're spending more and more and more.
My sense is that what we really needed now was more of the follow-through and the action plans. Because you get the sense that he was playing this balance between, pacifying us and withholding the cattle prod effectively. And that's actually what we need right now, especially in the context of, a downward forecast for growth in our country from 1.7 to 1.5%.
Yeah. So I think that you're absolutely on the mark there, because we were looking for some really bold signals that things are going to shift. And yes, it is difficult in an election year, but I think what we're seeing is that there isn't sufficient support within government as a whole to take these very, very bold steps that are required to really shift our growth rates dramatically. I think that we've been languishing in low growth rates for the last 10 years at least, and we need to see some very, very big shifts if we are going to actually dig ourselves out of not only the debt trap, but actually start growing employment and making the economy more inclusive and making it work for the country.
That was our panel, and up next, my jury is going to weigh in. This is Madam Speaker. Don't move.